So good morning, everybody, and very happy to be here at this nice venue, and very happy to have a panel of practitioners and experts and funders. Today's topic of this panel is microfinance response to the refugee crisis. And just a brief synopsis of what we are going to talk about. A recent refugee crisis raised a number of questions, many still unanswered, about the appropriateness of the latest policy responses. What is often omitted is the fact that in a number of countries, for example Lebanon, and we have here a speaker from Lebanon, also Jordan, other countries, refugees account for a large percentage of population, and as such are already playing an active part in economic and social lives of their host countries. Many refugees are also active clients of local microfinance institutions. The purpose of the panel is to first discuss the current involvement of microfinance institutions with
participants, please go to the rooms, the sessions are starting.
Yes, we started with refugees. Second, to identify additional areas of involvement. And third, to formulate appropriate responses for microfinance institutions, funders, and policymakers. The panel, the way we plan to run it, each speaker will make a presentation of about 10 minutes. Then we have one special speaker here who will speak the last. It's Silke Mueffelmann from Frankfurt School. She will make a commentary on the previous speeches, so that will be also a bit, let's say, some of it will be instantaneous response to what she heard. Then we will, if we have time, we'll have a short Q&A within the panel, and finally we'll pass the floor to you, and you will be able to ask also speakers your questions. So at the end, also what we will do, also with a note taker, we will try to make recommendations and conclusions for the panel, which will be made publicly available as part of the conference report. And your comments will be taken into account. The first speaker today is Alia Farhat from Lebanon, from Majmoua. Alia is a socio-economic development specialist and a microfinance practitioner. She has been working with Majmoua since early 1999. She's a good example of internal growth, somebody who started as a financial analyst and became finance manager, a business development manager, and currently she is the human resource manager and acts as head of the non-financial service department. And she has very extensive education in France. So, Alia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Edvardas. Good morning. So, I have the chance to present you our experience from the field. And Majmoua, very quickly in a nutshell. Yeah. So Majmoua is the leading microfinance organization in Lebanon. We're an NGO. We started as a program in '94 as part of Save the Children US and became an independent organization in '98. Our mission, as you can see, promotes sustainable development by improving economic and social conditions of low-income individuals, our focus being on women and youth. We provide both financial services, microfinance, microcredit in particular, and non-financial services all over the Lebanon. So today our structure has basically 22 offices across the country. We're a 300 employee organization, which is a large organization for Lebanon. And we serve 55,000 active borrowers of the microfinance services with an outstanding portfolio of about $50 million. The Syrian refugee crisis is something that started in early 2011 in Lebanon by observing an influx of refugees. And as you can see on this map that is coming from the UNHCR, it has been an exponential influx of refugees. Starting from June 2012, we were around 25,000 registered refugees at the HCR. In April 2014, they were showing above 1 million of refugees in the country. As of June 2015, we were at 1.5 million of registered refugees in Lebanon. Considering that Lebanon is a country of 4 million inhabitants, you can do the math and see what is the percentage of the population that is today composed of refugees. Knowing also that when we're saying 1.5 million registered refugees, there is still a number of refugees also who are not registered with the UNHCR. So what was our response? First of all, a component in the financial services. What we did is, in 2014 and 2015, to pilot with a small group of Syrian refugees, women Syrian refugees, and women Lebanese host community, we tried the group lending methodology, which is the group lending methodology we've been doing since '94, so it's an old product of Majmoua. But we wanted to test how it could work to have mixed group loans that would include Syrian refugees and Lebanese. And the pilot ran with the following terms, so loan amounts from $200 to $900, maturity of 6 to 10 months, of course the guarantee being the group solidarity amongst the women in the group, and they would select each other when they're forming the group. The first analysis and the first finding that we had from this pilot is basically the majority, almost 50% of the loans were with an amount of $500. Most of them to do small income generation activity, so to purchase raw material, to be able to do some small food transformation products in the sewing industry, so very small activities. The interesting fact is 60%, almost 55% of the loans were used for business purposes and 25% for personal use. There was no major difference in repayment capacity and overdue structure amongst the Lebanese and the Syrian. What we noticed, however, is the default was higher if we were financing businesses that are less than 1 year in activity, which is a regular risk that we have with small startups. So now what we're doing, building upon this first pilot that we did, we're trying now to develop a specific loan for refugees, trying to get the learnings from this analysis and develop a product that would be adapted for the needs of the refugees, and it would target both, it would be both under the form of a group lending product and also an individual lending product. So this is a new development that we're doing now. What would be good, what we would like to see, is basically if we're able to get some fundings to be able to provide this new loan product. And here the idea is that if we want to scale up this type of investment for the refugees, of course there's the issue of the risk of the population we're dealing with. So probably at the same time there would be some discussion to see if we will be able to secure a guarantee fund, a risk fund that will help us to take more risk as a microfinance organization and be able to provide loans to a larger population of the Syrian refugees. Second, the non-financial services response. So what we did is we worked heavily with the UNHCR and NGOs like Save the Children, like IRC. And we actually opened, we did some livelihoods project. Of course, we were not working in the humanitarian response because it's not our core business. We're not a humanitarian agency, we're a development organization. So what we did is we opened livelihood centers and we delivered non-financial services to more than 12,000 beneficiaries, being both Syrian refugees and host community, Lebanese host community, because the Lebanese government has made it very clear that any funding that will come to help the Syrian refugee has to also be targeting equally the Lebanese host community that is being affected by the influx of refugees. I will not go through all the points, but you'll be able to get the presentation on the website if you're interested. The focus was heavily on technical skills trainings, business management trainings, how to start your own business. So basically, again, focusing on women and youth, help them create a small income generation activity that they could rely on to actually have some income instead of remaining dependent of the international aid. Some access to market, life skills. An important component that was requested also from all the donors was to work on the social cohesion. So have activities with a lens of building social cohesion between the Syrian refugees and the host community, because of course you can imagine that with such a percentage of refugees there has been some issues, tensions amongst the communities to actually being able to absorb such a large influx. So what's next? I still have time? Okay. I'm just coming back from Jordan, the Dead Sea, where the UNDP called for a resilience development forum to kind of see what are going to be the next step in the region in terms of response to the crisis. Some of the things they have noticed is that the traditional aid architecture has reached its limits. And if we're looking only at this crisis in the region from a humanitarian lens, it's not working anymore. It's time to find some linkages between humanitarian and development capacities. So the idea of this whole forum was to actually be able to develop an articulated vision, short and long term, for the crisis and how to answer it. And the main objective was to be able to build a resilience agenda. A resilience agenda that will target both, again, Syrian refugees and host communities. Some of the recommendations that came out of the Dead Sea conference was the need to support a stronger leadership of host governments, the need to engage the private sector next to the public sectors, specifically, for example, to target infrastructure projects. The new areas of involvement that were identified was to encourage international investment in the host communities, in the host countries, to boost the economy, because in a time where we have a bit of a sluggish economy, it's also more complicated to be able to provide jobs or economic opportunities for the Syrian refugees. To develop local MSMEs, so they can help also to create jobs for both the Syrian and the Lebanese, and to identify value chains that could allow for the Syrians to have income generation activities and at the same time not competing with the Lebanese population. Finally, an interesting point came out from this conference was to start also look at the resilience and how to support the resilience inside Syria. So it's like looking at Syria and what are the activities that would be done, then looking at the neighboring countries and how to help them to face the crisis. And the final recommendation was, of course, to work on finding a political solution to the conflict. So this is the little insight I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alia. It's very, I think, impressive to hear immediately from the field, from the source, let's say, and people who are immediately are affected by the refugee crisis. I'm sure we will be able to ask a few more questions, but I want, for the sake of moving with the presentations, to ask Resi Janssen, who is a senior investment manager from Stichting Cordaid, a European not-for-profit organization, to give us another perspective, maybe a perspective from a European foundation, and trying to see what other dimensions, let's say, are to the crisis. Before I pass the floor, I just want to say that Resi is a very experienced microfinance and SME investor and expert, and held different positions at different organizations in over 30 countries, mostly in Africa. So we have here an expert on Africa. And she is responsible at Cordaid for the Africa portfolio, and currently still holds several board positions in investees. So Resi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, but first I have to get my PowerPoint somewhere here. Thank you. So, Cordaid is a Dutch relief and development organization and an impact investor. Related to the refugees, we do three things. We support we give relief support to refugees. We support the creation and financial inclusion of cooperatives of refugees in the Netherlands. And we make investments in conflict-affected countries through our Stability Impact Fund. Now, regarding the relief services, we have been providing relief services since 101 years to be exactly, when we supported the Belgian refugees in the First World War, so in 2014. Actually, we provide relief in the conflict areas, in the neighboring countries, and on the roads along the way to Europe and in the Netherlands. We do so in collaboration with the Caritas partners, which are 171 at the moment, and Cordaid is a founding member of Caritas Internationalis. Now the support includes a winterization program, warm clothes, blankets, warm shoes, distribution of food, mobile clinics. In Syria we support the candle factories for job creation and production of candles. Then in the Netherlands we had a program to support the creation and financial inclusion of cooperatives of people that are excluded from the labor market. One of them was a cooperative of refugees, and now we have made a proposal to make a special program only focusing on the creation of cooperatives for refugees. You know, their socio-economic participation is limited. About 1/3 lives below the poverty line, 1/3 is dependent on social welfare. They have language problems, their diplomas are recognized. They have been years outside the labor market during the asylum procedures that take years, and during which they are not allowed to work. They have about 10 to 15 members, and Cordaid provides legal advice, training, counseling, exchange of experience. We give 5,000 euro for startup costs. We try to link them to financial institutions for it. At the moment it's only subsidies because they do not qualify for bank loans. Example, the one cooperative with refugees that there is now is called Afripan, and it is composed of East African refugees, migrants that have been for years in the Netherlands, and they provide catering services from their houses to other African people or international community in The Hague. And through the cooperatives, we hope that the people get back with with working, having a business, and in the end they can go out of the cooperative and have their own business if they want to, because perhaps they want to stay. There are two types of cooperatives. One is that people have their own business but have jointly organized the administration or logistics, and the other one, of which Afripan is an example, is cooperative where people produce things together. Then what we have is we have created our Stability Impact Fund, through which we want to contribute to peace building, stability, and in such a way to prevent new conflicts and prevent more people having to flee. We make investments in the MFI funds and SME funds in fragile countries or conflict-affected countries like South Sudan, Sierra Leone, DRC, Congo, and Nigeria. In South Sudan we have invested in 2 MFIs, and they have experience with refugees in 2 ways. They are, amongst others, operated in Juba, the capital of South Sudan. Now lots of people have come from other areas in South Sudan to Juba. They have given loans to those people, but with the group lending methodology you need social cohesion and stability and people knowing each other. Now those refugees, they have been there for a short time. In other countries you have in refugee camps, people know each other, they're stable, etc. But here they were not. So the group lending model was difficult, no stability. You give loans to people and afterwards you cannot find them anymore. So they stopped doing that. And the other relation with refugee was 2 years ago there was a renewed conflict which is still going on, and the MFIs experienced clients that were fleeing. So they took different measures to keep the relationship with their clients, maintain contact, look where they are, look how they are, radio talks for peace, and adapted products and services to the new situation, allowing people to make repayments or withdraw savings in other branches than where they originally belonged to. Change with repayment schedules, make loan terms longer, etc. We supported them to make a contingency plan for the next time there's active fighting. Cost cutting, of course, because you have less income, you have to lower your costs. Other thing with the Stability Impact Fund, we invest in extra small and SMEs, provide technical assistance to SMEs. We have trained entrepreneurs in Sierra Leone and Ethiopia. We have invested in West African Venture Fund that has invested in 22 companies. We will start making direct investment in SMEs when we have local investment officers. And it is really to support stability, to peace building, and to avoid renewed conflict, or that people having to flee. And last week the European reached an agreement with the African countries to create a 1.8 million euro fund for job creation, poverty alleviation, and entrepreneurship. To avoid more people in the Horn of Africa and for the Sahel countries, to avoid more people fleeing or migrating to Europe. Lastly, we made proposals for a new project. It's called the CHIP, and we are still looking for funding for it. And it is to help 8,000 young entrepreneurs starting their own business or to find a salary job, 2,000 in Nigeria and Egypt. It's through youth economic hubs offering young entrepreneurs start-up support, linking them to other stakeholders, to other entrepreneurs, to experts, to support for entrepreneurship, market-oriented professional training. And we work through ABA, for the financial inclusion part. We will work with ABA, the Alexandrian Business Association, and ACDA in Egypt, and Fortis Microfinance in Nigeria. So the 3 ways that Cordaid works with refugees. Thank you.
Thank you, Resi. What what I hear here is something already what Alia said on about the resilience agenda, and here maybe a new maybe thought on conflict prevention. And then when you think about microfinance, then you know how can microfinance prevent conflicts is actually maybe indirectly by providing those opportunities, economic opportunities for young people, and acting as a stabilizing even force. The second, what also you said is about the refugees, is that once they come here to Europe, there are still problems, and microfinance can also help them here in Europe. And I think that maybe this panel, it's a bit beyond maybe our panel's scope, but that's also very interesting to hear that Cordaid, an organization which is active outside of Europe, is also doing things of high relevance in Europe, in the Netherlands. So I think there are a number of maybe south-north lessons one can draw. Now I would like to pass the floor to Jasmina Glisovic from Council of Europe Development Bank, and many of you probably know Jasmina from her previous role at CGAP, where she worked for a number of years providing strategic advice on microfinance and financial inclusion to donors and investors, and served as CGAP's lead on the work related to small enterprises and savings agenda. One interesting aspect of your CV, Jasmina, is that before joining CGAP, you also worked for Danish Refugee Council in Serbia. So I think here some of your experiences that you bring, I would really like to hear and to see how you are applying them also in your work with CEB. Thank you.
Thank you, Edvardas. It's good to be back here. I don't have an occasion to come to this event because we don't support microfinance as our core business, but we do finance some microfinance organization as one part of our mandate is also job creation. So let me just very briefly tell you about CB, because I was asked to explain who we are, as we are not a typical microfinance vendor, so probably you don't know about this institution. So basically we are the oldest IFI in Europe. We were created after the Second World War in 1956 to help Europe at that stage deal with migrant and refugee issues. So it was basically a fund that was created and became an institution. We have 41 member countries, and as you see on this slide, our mandate is basically social integration. So in this context, we finance social infrastructure, so social housing, we finance hospitals, we finance schools all over Europe, and job creation is also part of our mandate. And in this sense, we also cover microfinance, or to be more specific, microcredit. And this is the area that we cover. So basically, it's the EU countries plus the Balkans, Turkey, and Georgia. And I personally work as a country manager currently for Georgia and Bosnia. So to compare a little bit what is happening now in Europe with our experience in CB, I would like to use the example of Bosnia and Herzegovina, because I personally work there, and this is a country where we had, as you know, a war, and after that a big crisis with refugees, many displaced persons within the country, outside the country, in the neighboring countries, also in the EU, and even in the States and Australia. So basically, the difference is now that we're still in the emergency state. That is quite different in a sense that there is an unpredictable part that we have to deal with. So we don't know how many refugees will come and migrants, and we don't know whether there is a possibility to go back and when there will be a possibility for these people to go back to Syria. So here we have an issue whether we should focus more on emergency, providing immediate help to people, or think about integration. Sometimes in some countries they are asking us to already help with integration programs, while I will show you that in some countries we are focusing on emergency support. So basically there is also another element, which is the economic situation of the transit countries and recipient countries, and we make a big difference between the transit and recipient countries because they are both affected differently. In the transit countries, we are mostly dealing with the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, Greece, Turkey, Serbia, Croatia, and Slovenia. But mostly we have projects right now, emergency support in Serbia and in Macedonia, as well as in Turkey. Then what we are trying to do, and what we, to compare to Bosnia, what we're already also trying to do in Bosnia and Herzegovina, is to have a holistic approach, not to have only one type of service, but to also have immediate or emergency support, and to help people with some integration services, and the states as well. So for example, in Bosnia we are still working with the refugees, and currently we are implementing our last project that should actually close the refugee story, and this is focused on the closure of all collective centers that are still existing in this country 20 years after the war. So to come to our current actions. So as I said, we basically have two types of support: emergency and long-term integration. And since this crisis right now is so important, we for the first time created a special separate fund to help deal with the situation. And this fund is called the Migrant and Refugee Fund. We created it very quickly with the support of our member countries. The EIB also contributed to the fund, and this is kind of like a joint action to immediately come up with some funds to help mostly right now transit countries. So we approved already and already dispersed in Serbia. Just to give an example, so in Serbia, it's very similar in Macedonia and other countries in the region. The government has set up transit centers where they're basically registering refugees, providing them with food, accommodation, medical support, transit services. It's a registration, which is very important for security reasons. And here the country is dealing with huge expenses that they are covering from the budget. And we immediately provided a grant support. The first grant to Serbia was around 2.5 million euros for really emergency support in the transit centers and the transit services, and health care as well. And here we will see what the future of the fund will be, depending on the flow. Like I said, it's very unpredictable. For now, we have approved 8 projects. The last grant is now being approved in Portugal, because this is a country as well that is dealing with refugees, and this is the first one that will be more focused on, it will focus on the transit centers, but in the recipient country, so no longer in the transit country, because Portugal is for many refugees the final destination. And in terms of long-term integration, and this is what I will say the next and the last slide, we are really trying to combine different services, and this is also where microcredit comes in. And in some countries, like in Germany, we already have a request for funding from local banks for housing, mostly housing, but also there will be other services that they will then provide. As they need to host people somewhere, and we're talking about social housing, and we're currently implementing integration projects already. I'm talking about this new crisis because we had them in the past, obviously, for other migrants and refugees, but with this specific crisis related to Syria, we also have requests, and the projects are being prepared in Belgium and in France. So basically, when we support microcredit, we support microcredit in this context, right? Because we also support microcredit in other countries, but in this context, we support microcredit in recipient countries. Because for them, this is where the demand comes from, and they see it as a tool for integration, but just one tool. So we don't, as we are not a microfinance funder, we see this as a part of a bigger picture. So these people need to have housing, these people need to receive education, they need to receive healthcare, and they need, some of them who can or who express interest to get some self-employment, who are entrepreneurs, to provide them with financial services. And here you can see on the slide some institutions that we are already working with. In Spain, we have had significant experience with microbank, but and I will end here. Our main challenge is really the ability of these MFI partners to identify refugees and migrants. And what we've seen from the practice is that the cases where it really works to provide this package of services is where microfinance staff is specially trained to deal with refugees, to also identify them, to reach out, to propose the services, etc. And this is the case also in Spain, where such services are provided. But this is really a key, as they cannot, microfinance institutions cannot engage doing their business as usual, as there are many issues, like I said, especially because the crisis is not over, and this, in some cases, they need to focus really on other services as well, although microcredit remains the core business. And finally, for us as an IFI, the question of credit risk is always an issue, why we cannot fund more, but I will not go into details on that now. Thank you.
Jasmina, that was very good. I think we heard a few more maybe concepts here. One of them was the difference between emergency measures and second, integration measures. And I think one can already sense that in microfinance, probably we are better at providing integration measures, but maybe Alia can also disagree with me and say, no, we also are providing a lot of emergency measures, but that's something for a debate. Then there are another type of countries, so we already heard countries maybe of origin, then the recipient countries, and now we also hear about transit countries, and all of these countries have different needs, so different situation is there. I would like to give an opportunity to the panelists maybe to respond to some of the commentaries, okay, if that's fine with you. You know, for example, maybe this idea of the cohesion work, Alia, you already mentioned this, how important it was to have inclusive policies and instruments targeting both the refugees and communities. Maybe you can a little bit elaborate this, and also in view of the resilience agenda.
Thank you, Edvardas. To answer this question about the social cohesion, and actually to shed some light about something that Resi was mentioning about group lending. The way we provided our non-financial services was to always integrate women or youth, so Syrian refugees and Lebanese. So having them in the same room, attending the same trainings, was challenging at the beginning, because there's this fear of the other, a lot of misperception, and what we realized is that it usually needed an average of 4 to 5 sessions in cohorts, attending together trainings or activities so that you can break the ice and you can see some discussions, some exchange of experience coming in. And for this reason, the group lending and the financial services came after providing the non-financial services. And most of the groups who were created after they were together attending non-financial services, because of course we do not force them. They have to select each other, or the guarantee, solidarity guarantee, would not work. So this is an observation we made through our activities. I would like to just add something on the resilience. It's, as Silke was saying, a year ago, maybe this kind of session, this kind of panel was not like this hot potato thing, or it was not, now today it's different. There is a different momentum, there's a lot of changes that we have observed. And I think that, like the UN family did this conference on how to build a resilience agenda in light of the Syrian crisis, we could definitely have a 2-day conference that would gather development government agencies, social investors, practitioners in the concerned countries to try to do the same effort of brainstorming and coming up with practical solutions to answer the crisis.
Thank you, Alia. One more point that struck me a bit from Silke, your summary, was that the relief organizations were not so necessary here in Europe, and I would like to sort of challenge a bit Resi on this one, because I was quite impressed, in fact, with the work you were doing, but maybe on balance, indeed, you do much more outside of Europe, and there is very little here in Europe to be done by the type of organizations like you are.
No, that's true. Cordaid has over 300 people, and we still work until the end of the year in 11 topics. And also food security, extractives, women leadership, security and justice, entrepreneurship, etc., etc. And only part of Cordaid is working in relief and emergency aid. So we are an emergency and a development organization and a social investor, because we already invest. We have a fund in total of 60 million investments in MFIs and SMEs, etc. So only part is relief and only part is in Europe. I think what we didn't do, so when I received the invitation to participate in this panel, I thought, but what are we were not microfinance and refugees. We don't work with MFIs like Majmoua, who is having refugees as its client. But I think we really should think about how we could do more in this area. So if we could support MFIs, investing in MFIs in Lebanon or in Jordan, in the neighboring countries. In Yemen, we received a request from an MFI in Yemen, but we find it too risky, because also as a social investor, we need our return and we need our sustainability. So there is a risk of making investments and loans, guarantees, equity in MFIs in high-risk areas.
I think, Silke, you would like. Thank you, Resi. I feel that you, just before Silke, you have the word. I feel you partially answered the question. I understand. Yes, you are just a small part of Cordaid was in emergency and relief type of services, but I think the question here was from Silke, and maybe you want to elaborate this. The point was that it's more about how much should be done in Europe versus how much should be done, outside of Europe. And I was, in fact, very surprised. I was thinking that Cordaid was working only outside of Europe, but you are actually doing something also in Europe. And from Jasmina, what she was saying, there are many sort of maybe relevant lessons that we here in Europe should should maybe learn already from maybe successful experiments or pilots done by institutions like Al-Majmoua. For example, I think you mentioned that a significant part of refugees continue living for years and years in Europe below poverty line almost. I don't know, Silke, you wanted to make a commentary additional on this.
Only to clarify, for me, relief organization is really to help in states or in situations like in Lebanon now, no? So this disproportion. And in Europe we have established, more or less established political system, financial system, we have funds, yeah? So our governments, it's rather a political decision whether funds from budgets will be relocated to tackle this problem, yeah? Then that other private relief organization starts to work now in Europe. I think the hot potato is in the fragile states. Yeah? The big challenge is imagine we have 30 million refugees in 3 years in Germany. Yeah? So I don't know whom we ask for help. Yeah?
Okay, thank you for this additional commentary. It made it a bit more clear. Jasmina, you wanted to also respond on some of this discussion at the panel?
Yes, mostly on Silke's comment that Europe can manage, almost like it's easy. It's very difficult in Europe. I mean, I think all of us, even if we're not experts for politics, can see that Europe is struggling on many issues. And first of all, when we talk about Europe, I think different countries in Europe see this crisis differently. Different countries in Europe have very different perspectives on how the refugees should be treated. I think that different countries in Europe have different economic position and different standard of living. Some of them are struggling. There was, as we all know, a big crisis, indebtedness, they were cutting budgets, etc. So it's not that easy for our member countries. I'm talking about CV now, to relocate budgets, to now deal with something new. There is a political decision, but sometimes these political decisions are not easy to take because we have elections and we have voters, etc. So it's not, I would just like to add a little bit of complexity to your conclusion that it's going, that for Europe it's kind of not difficult because we have such a big GDP contribution in the world. I think that's right, but the issue is that also sometimes we don't see easy solutions, clear solutions. It's not, even with funds, we don't know how to deal with some issues. And yeah, this is what I wanted to add, a little bit of complexity.
Thank you. I understand there is more complexity, but the good news is that we are talking about microfinance today, so we can narrow this down a bit. And I would like to give an opportunity also to our patient audience to ask a few questions, and then we will see how do we take it forward. But so please raise your hand and please introduce yourself. And we have here our assistant who will kindly take the mic to you. So I see the first hand there.
Nicholas Bergman from the German Savings Banks Foundation. I would like to add a bit about what Silke was saying about the situation in Germany and beyond. The Savings Banks Foundation for more than 20 years has been working in developing countries, trying to bring access to financial services to lower income population and small enterprises. For a year now we have been dealing also with the situation in Germany, quite obviously. Just to give you a few figures, we expect that by the end of the year Germany will welcome about 1 million refugees or migrants. Out of those, about half of them open an account with the savings banks in Germany. 500,000 new accounts will be opened by the end of the year. Okay, we have more than 12,000 branches, so when you do a short calculation, that means about 40 new clients per branch. But obviously not all are going to the same branches. So we have branches now which have to be closed because there are so many refugees who are coming to open an account. Because obviously the local authorities in Germany, when they pay social benefits to the people, to the refugees, they don't want to do it in cash. They cannot do it in cash because they don't have the capacity to do so. So everybody, every migrant, refugee who comes to Germany needs to have an account which needs to offer the basic services, which means you have to issue a debit card to go to the ATM, you have to enable people to do money transfers, also international money transfers. So opening the account only is the first step. So how do we deal with that? It means that we have opened special branches for refugees. So for example, in the city of Berlin alone, there are 3 new branches which are dealing with refugees only, and where we concentrate also the language skills that we have. I'm happy that we have so many language skills in our group with 250,000 employees. Well, there are, I think, more than 150, 200 people who are originally coming from Syria working for us for many years now. So that makes it a bit easier. But anyway, we have to open the branches over the weekends to open the new accounts. So this is a real challenge. So it's not so easy from a practical point of view. Politically, it's easy. And money-wise, it's easy, for Germany at least, to deal with the situation. But from an organizational point of view, on the ground, I think it's a real challenge. And here, it's, well, opening the account is the first step only. People often don't know what an account is, how to deal with it. So financial education will be the next step, and we have to see how we organize this in Germany now, what we've been doing in other countries for the last 20 years. And now the next challenge will be, well, what will happen with those people who are waiting, who are on the road to come to Europe. And I'm afraid that in Europe we have a tendency to, well, beg your neighbor, something like that. So we would be happy if everybody would be staying in Turkey, for example, and not coming to Europe. But can we leave Turkey and other transit countries alone? And this is what is on our focus right now, to see what we can do in those transit countries especially.
Thank you. It's a very interesting commentary. I think we'll collect a few, but my first sort of reaction to your challenges and also your point about financial literacy as well. We have here an expert who has been doing this for now a number of years from Lebanon. And maybe it would make sense that they come to the German Savings Association and provide some training for, or some sort of presentation for your staff and employees.
Actually, I was going to tell you that we're willing to provide technical assistance in this matter. Just to mention it, in the past 2 years, we've been a provider of technical assistance to the main international NGOs in Lebanon working on the Syrian crisis. And the focus was first on developing the capacity building of their staff, because they had to recruit staff who had no experience in dealing with such projects. And second, we were also helping the INGOs to better understand the context and how to have an effective response. So we're there.
Hello, my name is Clive Munn. We have a new startup called MFootsie Affairs, and we are creating a new website called Finance. We call it MFootsie Affairs. It's brand new. We only started in September, and we're building a website actually starting this week, which I hope will be a tool to help you guys. Basically, we want to use social networking to help financial literacy. And we intend to do that. I can explain it in more detail, those that are interested. But here in Luxembourg, I've attended a number of refugee functions. We're pretty active here, and I'm very keen on the idea that whilst refugees are waiting to get their permit to work, we will ask them and encourage them to join all of our startup sessions so that they can learn how to start up a company, etc., etc. So that's only one of our objectives, but we believe that our vision is finance for good and a socio-economic conscience can change the world.
Thank you. That's very interesting to hear, the practical tool that is being developed by, I assume, private sector. It's a private sector initiative. So, more questions or responses, commentaries? Yes, please. I think there one, and then we please introduce yourself. Given that many know you.
Jürgen Hammer from Grameen Credit Agricole Foundation. I believe that one of the important questions in this entire case is the legal status issue. I also think that there is certainly a big difference between the specificity of the Syrian crisis, where we have, as it was mentioned before, a population with a very high entrepreneurial background and experience, to other crises of refugees which are, let's say, also strongly economic. I would, it would be interesting to hear from your experience in Lebanon what the status of the refugees in Lebanon was, and how that influenced the capacity to provide funding and other services to the population compared to let's say the work permits and other visa issues and let's say legal status of the refugees in the country. And if there are things that in Europe we need to integrate, maybe also as active organizations play a more active role with policymakers to change that, to create an environment that helps our service to be more effective.
Yeah, thank you. I think, well, legal status, I think that everybody can comment on this because it's an issue not only in Lebanon, it's an issue in Europe as well and in other countries. Do you want to make an immediate response or maybe take another question? And I think there was the question here. Maybe, yeah, please translate.
I'm Dieter Seibel, University of Cologne, and former EFP board member. I appreciate what Niklas Bergman said. Opening accounts by savings banks, and in the future also cooperative banks, I suppose. I think this is a total of 30,000 branches that they have in Germany, and the Deutsche Bank will be of lesser importance here. It's very important that they have accounts, the refugees, but as you said, it's challenging, to put it mildly. My question is actually to you, to what extent you might consider that informal finance has to play a role here? I suppose you're all aware that despite the expansion of formal finance throughout the South, that informal finance has been spreading at the same time. It has not reduced the importance of informal finance. And let me just stick to the Syrian case. And there are two institutions I am thinking of. One is the Jama'iyya, and that is what, since Baumann has been called the ROSCA, the Rotating Savings and Credit Association, which in many cases has evolved into a non-rotating permanent fund, which is a loan fund. These are usually smaller groups. It can be five people, they can be 50 people, anything in between. And international NGOs have been involved in this during the last 20 years, like in Africa there are now about 500,000 such facilitated savings groups, as they call them, with 10 million members. Now, the other institution is the Sanduk. The Sanduk you would translate into saving Sparkasse, Kestepane. In English, you don't have a proper name for that. Could call it a community fund. IFAD has been supporting such Sanadik. Sanadik is the plural of Sanduk. And UNDP in Syria over a wide stretch of the country. And they are equity driven actually, which means that the members of a Sanduk, which could be 50 members or 500 members, they make an equity contribution, and that constitutes the loan fund. I'm just mentioning these two forms, which are very widespread, and in the case of the Jamaiya, the Isuzu is an institution which has spread from the Yoruba in the 16th century with the slave trade all over the Caribbean and in recent decades to all American northern cities, where you can see that the fact that there is a banking system doesn't solve the problem of the immigrants. And that's why I think you might consider taking a fresh look at informal finance with regard to the various populations that are being served here, and maybe incorporate that next to all these concerns with formal finance and other formal services.
Well, thank you. I think your point is clear. What is the role of informal finance? Sorry, I want to take a third question at the back, because we have 10 minutes left. So third question at the back, and then I give the opportunity to the panelists to pick one of the points made. Please, there is one person there, and you can then each of you will have an opportunity to respond, and then we'll conclude. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Adib Sharaf. I'm from Microfinance Institution, Syria. Just want to comment on the refugee support. That I think what is being done and intending to done is quite critical, but also there is the importance of improving the resilience of people inside. Really, this is what can help, because otherwise the fluctuation of people will just carry on. Like if you assume that the total population will move out after like 2-3 years, but if we really did not improve the resilience of people inside who are still there, will keep on going. I mean, hopefully, unfortunately, it might be endless. So this is, I would think, that is quite critical to consider this topic as well. When you're talking about helping refugees, we won't be very optimistic, say, okay, this might reverse the movement, but at least it will stop. It will really control and reduce the flow of the people outside.
Thank you, and it's great that you are here. A Syrian functioning microfinance institution, a good example of I think this incredible resilience of microfinance, even in the most difficult circumstances. I give the opportunity now to the panelists, each of you, to respond to any of the questions or comments you heard. Who would like to start? Would like to proceed in one row, if possible. So, Silke, is it possible? You start. Thank you.
I will pick the question from informal finance. To think about informal finance, what we also have seen is this importance of self-help, yeah? Because refugees, when they want to access loans, they don't have a credit history, yeah? So also the experience which Cordaid had, we have seen that as well. And there it's for sure the Rosca, and it's built on self-help, yeah? When there are no financial services, yeah? So for the fragile states, I would see that. For Europe, I wouldn't so much. There are also some, but for example, also the cooperative, or in England, in Europe, it's like newborn adults, yeah, the refugees, yeah, they are adults, they are newborn, yeah, they do not have an ID here in Europe, yeah. What I can rather see, and there are also some efforts to do new delivery channels, mobile phone, yeah, mobile phone. And we were also a little bit brainstorming before this panel what other good idea in order to substitute the credit. There, you know that there's a technology, nano credit. Maybe some of you have heard that mobile phone providers in Africa give to people loans based on the airtime they buy. Yeah, so they create their record. Yeah, so there are some in more developed context. I would see rather this than informal finance. Yeah, to look at different delivery channels.
Thank you, and I'm happy you mentioned also the role of technology, maybe which we didn't really fully discuss in this panel. Jasmina.
Just very quickly, 3 maybe concluding remarks rather than answering the questions. I would agree with Silke on the informal finance, and also the idea on technology. To use technology is an excellent idea. And I would like to, although it's not our mandate to work in Syria, definitely invite those who can work there to work more there and to support microfinance organizations and to help create income-generating activities in the country wherever that's possible. And I think that here donor community has to help with maybe providing some guarantees to investors and taking more risks there. And finally, I would just like to conclude from our perspective, definitely, we discussed it today, but microfinance, I think we can conclude, specifically microcredit has a role to play in Europe. And I think as people, as the integration starts and takes off, there will be more demand for this service.
Thank you, Jasmina. Excellent. And Alia, maybe you can do the same. Also give your concluding remarks plus any response you want to make.
To answer Jürgen's point about the legal issues, it is indeed a major problem, because if we're looking at Lebanon, today we even have a legal issue with how to name the population who are in the country. So should they be named refugees or migrants? So it's up to this. Talking about working permits, the government is having restrictive measures to protect the Lebanese employment. So for example, today, officially, if you're a Syrian, you can work in only 3 sectors in Lebanon, and you can get working permits only in construction, agriculture, and maintenance, cleaning work. So it's very limited. If you're an entrepreneur, you cannot officially create a business. You have to be in the totally informal sector, and you could be at risk of, if you're a Syrian and you have a small enterprise, to see police forces coming in and close your business. So it is indeed very challenging, and it's challenging to scale up activities in this context. So for this reason, we think that we have to think out of the box. We have to identify value chains that are not competing the Lebanese. We have to find solutions to help the Syrians inside Lebanon to have income generation activities. Or we're at risk of having social explosion inside Lebanon. And yes, the microfinance organizations can play a role in stabilizing by somehow creating job opportunities, income generation activities, but there is a point where it is no longer microeconomics, and we have to look at macroeconomic solutions. So here comes this transition phase where we have to plan for the future altogether.
Thank you, Alia, and I think it's interesting to hear, and I think that's one of the maybe key messages, that yes, there is a role for microfinance, but there are limits also to microfinance, and we heard the different contexts where it is more effective than in other contexts and different forms of also microfinance. And Resi, you have an opportunity to be one of the concluding speakers today.
Yeah, well, thank you. I just would like to recommend you to go to the award session tonight. I will have the pleasure to be in the selection committee for the 6th European Microfinance Award, which had the topic of microfinance in conflict-affected areas and post-disaster, post-conflict. I read a few proposals of a Syrian MFI, of a Yemen MFI. I was surprised. Before I thought they don't exist anymore. It's conflict ever. It's not. They are so brave and they are so innovative to continue working for their clients and to support staff, so to enhance resilience of both their own institutions and resilience of their clients. It will be published, all these experiences. It was really great. As you said, you need to support resilience of the people there, and to support MFIs to continue working there. It is possible, they're doing it right now.
Resi, thank you very much for concluding on such a positive note, I would say, for such a complex subject. And I'm happy that we hear that microfinance could be one of the instruments, one of the solutions, and that we need involvement of all the actors, the public, the IFIs, the microfinance institutions, the NGOs, private investors as well. We need to work together to find solutions, and With this note, I would like to leave you here. Enjoy your continuation of the Microfinance Week, and see you later at the European Microfinance Award ceremony hosted by the European Investment Bank this evening. Goodbye.